Okay, welcome back to Lesson 4. So in this lesson we're going to be talking about the basics of argumentative writing. So this will be a really important lesson for the first essay, and actually the next lesson is going to be your assignment for the first essay. But it'll also be important, some of the things we talk about in terms of structure here will come back for essay 4 as well. So this might be a lesson that you refer to later on in the semester as well. So the objectives for this lesson are 4. First, we're going to understand the basic structures of argument, learn how to articulate a thesis, and what a thesis is, learn how to defend a thesis with the reasons. We'll talk about what reasons are and how to develop them, and learn how to introduce and handle counterarguments, or arguments that go against your reason. So last time we talked a little bit about the 5-paragraph essay format, and we said it works really well with expository writing, and I suggested that that would have been a really nice frame for the first journal for you to do a 5-paragraph essay explaining the different types of people that you see at malls. That said, 5-paragraph essay works really, really well for argument. Actually, it's pretty much invented for argument. That's what a lot of people look to when they make an argument, is structuring their essay in terms of the 5-paragraph model. When most people think of arguments, let's just talk a little bit about arguments. When most people think of arguments, they think of something like this. Two people sort of bickering back and forth to one another. Hey, I told you to go grocery shopping and pick up the kids. Well, I told you to take out the trash and clean up after yourself. You keep doing that. You keep not doing that. Just sort of arguing back and forth. I like this little graphic, kind of depicts a sort of angry argument. And this kind of thing is true, right? Argument, the point of argument is to basically try to convince people to believe you, right? And that's what these two people are doing. She's trying to convince him to do something. He's trying to convince her to do something. All arguments do try to convince people, right, to believe something, or to do something, right? So in a successful argument, hopefully the person who's reading or listening to your argument is going to be compelled to do something. If we think about court cases, right, in a trial, the whole point is to either get the jury to believe that a person is guilty or get the jury to believe that a person is not guilty. There we can see this sort of basic idea of argument. However, whenever you're arguing an argument for a course orally or creating a written argument, you're going to need much more structure, right? So something like this doesn't really lack structure. There's a good chance that neither of these people are going to get their way. She's not going to end up picking the kids or doing the grocery shopping. He's not going to end up taking the trash. They're just going to be sort of angry and resentful towards one another. But when we're doing a written argument, we want to make sure that we have a lot more structure and we have a lot more methodical approach. If you're just sort of yelling at somebody or telling somebody to do something without much proof or support and in an angry kind of way, there's a good chance it's never going to work. So for a written argument, you always want to try to approach it methodologically and to have a very clear structure. Things that help you to have a clear structure are thesis. You want to make sure you have a good, clear thesis for your argument, that the reader knows exactly what your thesis is. You want to make sure you have very compelling reasons to believe your thesis. And you also want to address counterarguments that people might have to your argument. And that's what we're going to be doing in this lesson, is talking a little bit about theses, reasons, and counterarguments, the essentials of a good methodological argument. So let's start with thesis. It's a fancy word, thesis. Maybe you've heard of it. Maybe you haven't. Thesis is essential to an argument. Essentially what a thesis is a statement of the belief that you're trying to prove in your written argument. Right? So a thesis is just a sentence that says, this is what I'm trying to convince people to believe. It's a single statement. Typically, a thesis contains the word should or the phrase should not, and the thesis takes a stance on a controversial issue, or it answers a controversial question. That's a little abstract, but let's take a look at an example. For example, if somebody poses the controversial question to us, should kids under 13 be allowed to have Facebook accounts? We might consider this and say, should they? Yes, maybe they should. No, maybe they should not. A sample thesis would be an answer to that question. Kids under 13 should be allowed to have Facebook accounts. Notice how it uses that word should. And it's a statement that says what I believe or what I am trying to prove. Kids under 13 should be allowed to have Facebook accounts. Or the opposite thesis uses the phrase should not. Otherwise, it's almost exactly the same. Kids under 13 should not be allowed to have Facebook accounts. These two look very similar, but they're actually the complete opposites, right? In one case, we're saying yes, Facebook is a good thing for kids. In another case, we're saying no, Facebook is not a good thing for kids. So usually the thesis goes in the introduction. Remember, in the last essay, the last lesson, we looked at that funnel. And we said a good introduction always starts broadly and narrows down into the main idea. In this case, it would be your thesis. So if we were going to do this question in our introduction, we would probably say something like, Facebook has been around for a long time. Many people like to have Facebook, and then we narrow into the controversy. However, recently, it's more and more kids under 13 have been started creating their own Facebook accounts. Some people might think this is a good idea. However, kids under 13 should not be allowed to have Facebook accounts. So here, your thesis is the last sentence. Of your intro. And it makes a really clear statement of the belief that you have. So there's a good way to start an intro. So you can keep that same sort of cone thing in mind. Whenever you're writing an argument, make sure you start broadly, narrow down to the controversy. At the end of your introduction, state your thesis, which is the main idea of your essay. Thesis should definitely contain the words should or should not. So thesis is a really important part of argument. You want to make sure that the reader or whoever is listening to your argument knows what your thesis is by putting it very bluntly at the end of your intro, which is where readers will expect it to be. Once you have an effective introduction and you have a clear thesis in your introduction, you want to start moving into your reasons. So in order to convince people of your thesis, get people to say, yeah, that's true, kids under 13 should be allowed to have Facebook accounts, or kids under 13 should not be allowed to have Facebook accounts, you want to give multiple compelling reasons, not just one. Each reason is a different way that your thesis is true, right? So if we just have one reason, there's only one, like if we were to just say kids under 13 should be allowed to have Facebook accounts because they can keep in touch with friends. If we only have one reason like that, it's not going to be quite as convincing as if we have several different reasons. The more reasons you can give the reader to believe your thesis, the more distinct reasons, the more likely that reader is to ultimately buy your argument or believe what it is that you're trying to say. For example, let's take a look at if our thesis was kids under 13 should not be allowed to have Facebook accounts, our reasons could be these. One reason is because they could post inappropriate pictures or messages. There's a good reason. Kids shouldn't be allowed to have Facebook accounts because they could post inappropriate pictures or messages. A second reason is because Facebook could distract them from their schoolwork or family time. Here's another good one. That could even probably be two separate reasons. But we could also deal with it as one. Facebook could potentially distract kids from doing their schoolwork or distract them from wanting to spend time with their family. A third reason they should not have Facebook accounts is because there could be people who on Facebook who prey on the young kids. So those could be pedophiles, or it could be just other people who want to take advantage of sort of younger or more naive kids. So here we have not just one reason. So if one reason is inappropriate pictures, it might not be as compelling, but if we add all three reasons, now the argument gets stronger because we're looking at it from three different angles. So if these two don't happen to convince somebody, maybe the third one does. Or maybe the one on people preying on young kids could be very convincing for some people, but the one about inappropriate pictures could be more compelling for other people. So when you give multiple reasons, you give the reader more ways to believe your argument. So typically when you're giving an argument, you want to have at least three reasons. And that's why the 5-paragraph argument essay works very well for argument. So if we lay out an argument in terms of the 5-paragraph essay, we can see how nicely it fits into this format. The introduction would talk a little bit about the controversy, in this case, Facebook and kids getting Facebook accounts. It would state the thesis. In our example, the thesis would be kids not having Facebook accounts, or kids under 13 should not be allowed to have Facebook accounts. And then we move into our three reasons. And with each reason, we want to make sure we have a topic sentence, and then we have supporting details, or supporting examples. So our first reason could be because they post inappropriate pictures. Our second reason could be because kids might not spend much time with family, or it could distract them from our schoolwork. And then our third reason, we want to have a topic sentence for that, and supporting examples could be because there could be people who prey on kids. And then we say, in conclusion, Facebook accounts are not a good idea for kids. So we're restating the thesis in a slightly different way. And then we give suggestions. We say, I suggest that kids wait until they get older to have Facebook accounts and leave some kind of an impact. We want to make sure that our kids grow up healthy and don't regret any mistakes they might make as a youth. So that could be a good example of an argument, and it's a good example of how the 5-paragraph essay works well with the argument. But we don't want to stop there, because although the 5-paragraph essay works really well with arguments, the 5-paragraph essay is very one-sided. Right? It's only talking about the reasons why kids should not have Facebook accounts. But really good arguments don't just ignore the other side and pretend that the other side doesn't exist. Really good arguments always entertain the opposition's ideas by bringing them into the essay. If we go back to that picture of the two people arguing that I showed earlier in this lesson, if one person is just saying, you need to take out the trash because I told you so, that person is not likely to take the trash out at all. However, if the person says, I can see why you don't want to take the trash out. You've had a very long day. You've been working very hard. However, it would be nice if you could just do this thing and take it out for me. That would be a much more convincing way to get somebody to take out the trash, by acknowledging the other side, acknowledging their feelings or what somebody who has the opposite idea as you might say. That's the counterargument. The counterargument is bringing in the opposition's ideas along with your own. So when you do bring a counterargument into an essay, you want to make sure that you tell the reader, this is not my point of view. I don't believe this, but some people do think that. So saying a phrase like, some people might think this or some people might think that is a really good way to introduce a counterargument, because it tells the reader, this isn't my reason, it's not my point of view, I'm just entertaining the other side. So, for example, if our thesis was kids under 13 should not, a counter-argument would argue the opposite side and say something like this. Some people think that Facebook could help kids under 13 stay in touch with families. They might say this and that and this. However, the truth is that kids should not be allowed to have Facebook accounts. So there's a good way to develop a counter-argument paragraph, writing a whole paragraph about views that oppose yours. So if we're saying kids should not be allowed to have Facebook accounts, people who favor Facebook accounts might say something like, Facebook accounts help kids under 13 stay in touch with friends and family. They might say this, they might say that. And that's the whole idea of a counter-argument, basically just to present the other side in a paragraph someplace in the essay so that the reader doesn't feel like you're just making a one-sided argument. Typically, when you do include a counterargument in your essay, you want to make sure that you place it either before or after your reasons. Usually you don't want to place them in the middle of your reasons. So here could be one way to structure a 6-paragraph essay. This is why I advocate the 6 paragraphs instead of the 5 paragraphs, because the 6th paragraph includes the counterargument. So if we're going to do a 6-paragraph essay, we could have an introduction, and then a counterargument, and then our 3 reasons, and then a conclusion. This is probably my favorite structure for an argumentative essay, introducing the counterargument before your reasons. And the reason you want to do that is because then you end with your strongest reason, so your argument is more fresh in the reader's mind when you get to the conclusion. However, there is another alternative that some people like, and this is actually the traditional way that Aristotle talked about, putting the counterargument at the end of the essay. So we start our essay with our introduction, we give our 3 reasons, and then we entertain the other people's points of view, and then we move into our conclusion. I don't think that works quite as well as this, but you can also use that structure as well. Either way, whenever you're developing an argument, you want to think of it as 6 paragraphs instead of 5. Make sure you include the counterarguments as well. So let's take a quick look at a sample argumentative essay right now. Let me flip over to the argument. Here's one that I had a student write a few years ago, and it's on this exact topic. It's on preteens and Facebook, basically kids under 13. So why don't we read through this argument, and we'll notice some of those elements of argument that we've been talking about this lesson. Here's an example of a final polished essay, and this is what I want you to do with your essay as well. When you're going to complete a final essay, it's not so important for a journal, but for a formal essay, you want to make sure you include a header. Notice that he has a header with his name. This is by David Desmond. You might see him around. The professor's name, which is me, Brooks Winchell. The name of the class, which is Writing 101, and then the date, September 24, 2012 is when he wrote this. So always make sure you include a header for all of your essays. You also want a title, right? And your title shouldn't be Essay 1 or Title or something like that. It's better to use a title that's more catchy. Preteens and Facebook is a good thing. That's a good title. So let's just overview his essay real quick. He's got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraphs, right? So he actually did this with the counterargument, and we'll look at that counterargument paragraph 2. This already has some of my notes from before on there. But let's just read straight through the essay. And we'll start here with the introduction. So he starts this way. Facebook has become the place where people go to share personal stories, photos, and other information regarding their lives. It is also a great place for companies to get their message across to their targeted audience. But can and should kids under the age of 13 be able to use Facebook? Here he introduces the controversy. Being the father of a child that's under 13 and has had a Facebook account for about a year, I obviously believe that the benefits of Facebook far outweigh any issues that might arise. There's his thesis. He actually doesn't use the word should. Facebook has and will continue to be a great place for my daughter to connect with relatives that live nearby, keep up with friends, and it's a great place to play games. So pretty nice introduction. He talks just a little bit more generally about Facebook, so he starts broad. He narrows it to the controversy, which is, should kids under 13 be allowed to have Facebook accounts? And then he gives his thesis. So I said before that you need to use the word should or should not, and I do think it's a good idea. In this case, he actually doesn't. He says, I believe that the benefits far outweigh any issues that might arise. So clearly his thesis is kids should be allowed to use Facebook accounts, even though he didn't really state it quite that clearly right there. Also, in this last sentence, he says, Facebook has been and will be a great place for my daughter to connect with relatives that don't live nearby. It's a great place to keep up with friends, and it's a great place to play games. So there are his 3 reasons. Keep up with relatives, keep up with friends, play games. From there, he moves into his counter-argument paragraph, which basically goes from here to here. counterargument. So let's see how he does that. So his thesis is kids should be allowed to have Facebook accounts, and he says, there are some issues that might arise from children having Facebook, but those issues could happen to adults as well. So here he's raising the other side, right? He's sort of acknowledging there are some issues, even though he's kind of challenging it in this sentence. He says there are some issues that could arise. One of the issues that has come up with children using Facebook is internet bullying. There have been cases where teenagers have committed suicide because of what other teens have posted about them. There's also the issue of pictures and posting that other people post on Facebook and how appropriate those are for children. There also could be the possibility that people that your children meet and talk to on Facebook are not who they say they are. Those people could be pedophiles or other types of criminals. These are just not Facebook issues. All of these things happen in different websites, so here he's refuting. Here he introduces the other side, and here he's going on to refute it or challenge it. If we ban children from using Facebook, you'd have to ban them from using the internet altogether for these things not to happen. The best defense is to teach your children proper computer and internet use and pay attention to what sites they're going on. So I said in my note right here, this would probably work better in the conclusion. I do think that he doesn't need this part in here, but it's a pretty good counter-argument. It presents the other side, and he kind of refutes the other side as well. And then he moves into his reasons. So here he has his first reason, and he has a nice topic sentence. One of the facets of using Facebook that my child likes best is playing games. So here's a pretty good topic sentence. It tells us a little bit about what the paragraph's going to be about. Basically, the benefit of Facebook is that his daughter can play games on there. There are many games on Facebook. Some games are just fun, while other games, there are other games that are educational. I've played many games with my daughter on Facebook, and we both have had a great time playing. Right now, my daughter and I are locked in a battle of words with friends. This game is just like Scrabble, where you have letter tiles, and you make words out of them on the playing board. It's a fun game that both of us enjoy, but it is also a game that's educational by teaching her new words. So here's nice. Like I said here, maybe he could use an example, but he does have one good example in here to support his reasons. The example is it can help, kids can play games on there, and he gives the example of playing a game with his daughter, words with friends. So I suggested one more only because this seems just a touch short, but it is a good point. From there, he moves into his second reason. He has another good topic sentence here. Notice how I put that right there. Facebook also allows my child to stay socially active with her peers. So it allows her to keep in touch with peers. I find this very valuable because I don't want my daughter to be socially awkward. By letting her be on Facebook, I have found that she's having an easier time communicating with her friends. It has given her the self-confidence to be able to talk with them. By having a Facebook account, my daughter has had trouble. Before having a Facebook account, my daughter had trouble talking with other people. She would talk very quietly and didn't believe that anyone else really wanted to hear what she had to say. After being on Facebook, she's found that her friends want to hear what she has to say, and they're very interested in what she is doing outside of school. This would not have happened without the use of Facebook. Here's a really good example. I think he has a nice topic sentence, and he has a great example here of his daughter and how she wasn't that social before Facebook, but he sort of credits Facebook with her getting more confidence and being more social. I think that's pretty convincing for why she should be allowed. The games one, maybe not so much, but this one I think is a pretty good reason. Okay, so let's take a look at her last reason now, reason 3. And he has a nice topic sentence here as well. Another reason why children under 13 should be allowed to have a Facebook account is to keep in touch with family and friends that live far away. So here we know what the purpose of the paragraph is. My mother lives down in Florida, and for my daughter to keep in touch with her grandmother using traditional methods would be very expensive. There are many ways for them to keep in touch while doing other things. They like to chat and play games online. They can post messages to each other, or they can post comments on photos that the other person posts. Also, my daughter's aunt just moved away to college, and Facebook will allow them to keep in touch with each other and make being apart much easier. So here he has a couple of examples. He gives the example of his mother living far away, so his daughter can keep in touch with her, and he gives an example of his daughter's aunt moving away to college and his daughter being able to keep in touch with her. So here he uses two examples to back that up, and I think that's a pretty convincing argument too. She's allowed to keep in touch with family and aunts and friends that live far away. Okay, let's take a look at his conclusion. So he starts this way. I was a little hesitant letting my 11-year-old daughter get her own Facebook page, but as time goes by, I'm very happy with the decision. Like most people, when the topic of my daughter getting a Facebook account was first brought up, I only looked at the negatives of what could happen. There were no thoughts of how my daughter could benefit from Facebook. Right around this time was when a female teenager committed suicide because of the things that her classmates were posting about her on Facebook. Looking back, I'm very glad that her mother and I decided to let her get a Facebook account, because with our supervision, Facebook for my daughter has been very fun, educational, and socially beneficial. With supervision, there is no reason why a child under 13 should not be allowed to have a Facebook account. So here's the restatement of his thesis, and it's at the end of the conclusion. I said, usually you want your thesis to come at the beginning of the conclusion and then to sort of open out with suggestions. He does give some good suggestions. He says, although kids should be allowed to have Facebook accounts, there should be some limits, right, with adult supervision. So he does sort of make that concession in the conclusion, which is a good thing to do. But yeah, so he has a clear thesis. He puts his at the end. I don't think it works quite as well here. It probably would have worked better if it was further up in the essay. But he does restate his thesis, and he has some good suggestions. So overall, this is a very solid argument. All the paragraphs are very focused and unified. He has a nice introduction, very clear thesis. He looks at counterarguments well, and he has a nice conclusion. And it's about 3 pages. So nice example of an essay right here, and that's why he got an A on this one. So do an essay like this for your first essay, and you'll get an A as well. Let's just flip back to the PowerPoint, and we'll sort of wrap up this lesson. So, a solid written argument needs to have a good thesis, right? It should be clear, it should be upfront. The reader shouldn't have any question about what your point of view is. You also need to have multiple reasons, usually at least 3. And it's a great idea to use counterarguments. Those could either come before your reasons or after your reasons, but at some point you want to address the other side in a counterargument paragraph. Make sure you develop your points with good explanations and specific examples, like we saw in David's piece. He had some very nice examples of supporting his reasons. Overall, if you stick to these couple of things and you follow the structure in that example well, you can make a really strong argument. So right now we're at the end of this lesson, and I want you to move on to Lesson 5. Lesson 5 will come right after this one, and I'm going to give you the assignment sheet to Essay 1 in that lesson and talk a little bit about what I'm looking for. Essentially, what I'm looking for you to do is to create an argument just like David's, a 6-paragraph argumentative essay with an introduction, a counter-argument, 3 reasons, and a conclusion, and a very clear thesis. So in the next lesson, we're going to talk about choosing a topic for your essay and how to brainstorm your reasons and plan and design your essay. So let's move on to that now, and I'll see you there.